Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Kaspien webinar. Today, we are co-hosting with Sellzone, and we are so excited to have them here to talk about this really exciting topic, how to maximize Amazon profits by split testing your listings. I personally think that this tool is so powerful. It's free, and it really ensures that you build the ultimate Amazon listing. So you guys are really in for a treat today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and you will receive the video in your email by end of day. And without further ado, and we will have a live Q&A section at the end. So please put any questions you have for these wonderful hosts into that Q&A section you see, and we will get through as many as we can. All right. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to your first host, Jen, to introduce herself.
All right, yes, hi everyone, thanks for being here today. My name is Jen Johnson. I've been with Kaspien for over 7 years now, and my time at Kaspien has heavily revolved around SEO and Amazon listing content. And so naturally with that comes testing and split testing in particular, because we are constantly just trying to figure out what works best for the consumers and the algorithm. So that's why I'll be here co-hosting with Jen today.
And yeah, I'm Dan Saunders. I'm the e-commerce channel manager for the brand Stanley Black & Decker. I've been selling on Amazon as an owner for since 2012, so I've made pretty much every mistake you can make in the book. Hopefully, some of my findings will be useful for you all as well, because I've been there from when it was a really clunky beast of a platform to when it was a slightly less clunky beast of a platform, and hopefully some of the data we've pulled together will be really useful for you all. Just to echo Jen's thoughts on split testing, as it says in my bio, I've probably done about 2,000, maybe 5,000 split tests this year, because I work over any one time I could be working over 2,000, 3,000 SKUs, and I'm very much a big believer in using data to inform all of your insights.
Perfect. Yeah, so just to go quickly over the agenda, what we plan on talking through today. So we're going to start off with the why behind testing of your Amazon listing. So every test, you have to have a why. So make sure you know yours before you get going with your own test. Then we'll shift to the how to test Amazon listings, and more specifically, we'll be talking about 2 different tools that make just Amazon testing easy for you. We'll share some specific case studies or testing samples that both Dan and I have done, and then we'll end with that live Q&A. So just another reminder, as we're going through this webinar, please don't shy away from asking questions in the chat. We'll be sure to answer as many of those through the webinar, and then also at the very end in that live Q&A. So before we really kick off, we'll just do a quick introduction of the 2 hosts for today's webinar. So Kaspien first, we are a tech-enabled marketplace growth platform that acts as like a one-stop shop for brand owners that are wanting to expand their presence on online marketplaces. We were founded in 2008 as a third-party seller, and over the last decade plus, we have really evolved to offer retail, agency, and software divisions of business. And we really do pride ourselves on providing software and services to help brands succeed on major e-commerce marketplaces and make sure it's easy for them to succeed.
And yeah, as highlighted, I'm here to talk to you about Sellzone. It's a tool by Semrush. Some of you in the SEO world, in terms of Google, Bing, will know of Semrush, but Sellzone is the all-encompassing Amazon SEO tool. It deals with everything from paid listings to organic listings to listings checks. It really is, as it says here, the 360 listing traffic insight. We can use it for PPC, SEO. What makes us different is obviously powered by Semrush, which is one of the market leading SaaS platforms in the SEO industry and digital marketing as a whole. It's a customer driven product as well. So I've spent a lot of time beta testing with these guys to say, right, okay, this works for me. As a professional, I would be looking for X, Y, and Z, and they've made changes according to those as well. And one of the things that they've really understood, and people have heard me speak before, is the data quality, because we are nothing without the data that we provide. And from my experience, Sellzone has been the best at providing the data before as well. And you can say that because they don't pay me, so I can say that freely and without any bias. The split testing tool that I use from them is free for everybody, not just for me. And they've got a multitude of other tools as well, which we'll be going into in a little bit more insights as well.
Perfect. So yeah, let's kick it off. First one is testing considerations. So you're here most likely because you're on Amazon, or another marketplace. There's potentially maybe you have a website they want to conduct some kind of test for. So first thing we need to talk about is like, why is testing important? What are you trying to get out of it? So why are you testing? There's a handful of reasons you can see here right on this list. So no matter what channel you're posting on, selling on, etc., most of the time your main goal is just be discovered by traffic and consumers, and ultimately maximizing the visitors that are coming to your page. And you want them to engage, you want them to convert, right? So just trying to find ways to bring more and more potential customers is probably the main reason you want to get some testing going.
Yeah, if you're not there to sell on Amazon, then what are you even doing there? Let's put it bluntly, right? And this is one of these tools that's going to help us get there.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to eliminating uncertainty, what kind of things, like what comes to mind, Dan, when you're talking about eliminating any uncertainty sellers might have on Amazon?
Oh yeah, I mean, because as we said right at the start, Amazon is a very clunky, but it's a very protective platform. So Google is very forgiving of mistakes. Amazon is not in the slightest. It's always better to test and try and play within the guidelines. But if you stray even the slightest bit out of there, they'll come crashing down on you. So getting rid of that uncertainty element, and then also from a commercial standpoint, if you're having to build a business case, say, right, I think our customers are buying from us on Amazon, and they're buying from us, in more so than they're coming from in store or from Google, then you've got to build that business case. If you really believe that, you can then say, right, with full certainty, here's the data, and this is what I want to do with it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then even another tier to that is, no matter what world of SEO you're working on, there's a search engine algorithm that you're trying to beat essentially. And if you're at all familiar with algorithms, they can be pretty tight-lipped with what works and what doesn't work. So defining like, okay, get rid of this uncertainty of what's going to get our listings to show up first. You got to test. That's the only way you can crack the algorithm, no matter what platform you're working on.
Exactly, and one of the things that Jen and I will both be able to tell you is that conversion is a massive part of the ranking factors within Amazon as well. So if you're getting your conversion right, then Amazon's going to boost you up. Because if we take Amazon at its bare basic, we strip everything back, it's there to sell. So if you're helping it sell, you're going to get rankings off the back of it as well. Like I say, I'm assuming Jen, like I say, I know Jen's work. I know that the work that she's done with Kaspien, so I'm just making the assumption that I can say Jen knows that as well. So it's the cold hard truth about it is, if you can help Amazon sell your product in a meaningful, productive way, it's always going to reward you.
Yes, 100%. Perfect. Let's see now how to select your listing. So in the perfect world, you have all the time in the world. You can test anything and everything in your listings, but unless you're Dan and pumping out thousands of tests a year, that likely is impossible for most. So you really do have to determine the best way to prioritize your testing SKUs. And so two of the key things, I think, Dan, you provided these, like two of the key ways to identify your testing candidates is your underperforming listings, because there's always that opportunity to improve, or your top selling listings, because there's always the opportunity to increase sales, right? So
exactly. Sorry, Jen, I interrupted you there. What were you about to say?
Have at it. This was your point.
No, so yeah, the big thing is, again, going back to the commercial aspect, in any business, there's always that 80-20 split. So 20% of your listings is going to be driving 80% of your revenue. So always be testing whether it's a really failing product where you think actually it shouldn't be failing. I've tested the keywords, I've looked at the market research, I've looked at the competitors. This should be selling and it should be making me revenue, but it's at the bottom of the pile. So versus, oh, you know what, we pump out 300 of these a day, I could just leave this listing and not worry about it. You should always worry about those listings in particular, because as soon as you sleep on it, there's always somebody hungry that's going to be paying either Jen or myself a lot of money to catch up with you very, very quickly.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, so let's say you've identified listings you want to test. Now it's like, what within those listings are you wanting to test, right? There's the obvious listing elements that we have listed there, the title, bullet, images, but there's a lot of things outside of the very obvious that you can also test. So one example, we actually have a team member at Kaspien right now who is doing a test on images and getting them submitted into Amazon. So something that people don't think about is there are claims out there, and Dan, I don't know if you know the truth here, we didn't really talk about this ahead of time, but file names for images. Some people think that if you put keywords in there, that'll actually improve discoverability and the keyword potential at listing. Have you heard of that?
So I have heard of that. I've managed to test it a little bit now. I think this is more in terms of referral traffic because, as we all know, that especially with the latest release, that Amazon's rewarding people for listing outside of Amazon and bringing customers through. I've managed to test it on a very, very small scale, and we did see improvements, but it was more to do with the Google rankings and bringing outside traffic in rather than the Amazon platform, if that makes sense to everybody, because if you're going from Google to Amazon to then purchasing the product, you will see a boost in your sales because it's what we call as outside referred traffic, and that's what Amazon enjoys more than anything else whatsoever. So
Yeah.
I've tested it on a very, very minute scale. I wouldn't be comfortable enough to say, yeah, oh yeah, 100% spend all your time doing this. But in fact, on some of the case studies that we're going to present later, we've actually we added that as one of the testing factors, and we saw an increase in those sections as well. But we'll go into those in a little bit more detail. What about yourself, Jen? What have you seen?
We have not tested it yet, so that's why we are getting ready to get one going, and we're really excited to test it. But this is something that we'll also talk about, some of these testing tools. You mentioned that this type of test, it's all about referral traffic, and I can say the tool I'm going to talk about, it does not track that kind of data. So you're going to have to find a different way to track that data and be able to conduct those tests. So that's this part of the phase that we're in right now, is figuring out how we're going to measure the data with the tools that we have access to right now.
That's really interesting. It's a point that I could go on and on about, and it's yeah, you've sort of opened Pandora's box there. I'm taking us away from CRO and just taking us down a whole nother line down here. But yeah, that's interesting that you guys are going to be testing that as well, because like I say, I've only done it on the minutest scale. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. That's I'll talk for another webinar.
Yes, definitely. But that conversation right there is just a prime example that people get so stuck in testing title, bullets, images. There are so many different things you can test. That's just part of the reason I wanted to bring that up, because the sky's the limit when it comes to testing on these guys. And we'll hone on this a little bit more later, but also just want to call out, you want to test one element at a time. Like, yeah, there's a list of 5, 6 things here. Do not test all of them at once, because you really want to be able to pinpoint what edit actually caused the impact that you're seeing on your listings.
And yeah, just to back the point that I mentioned before, where I'm doing, at the moment, I'm probably running about 20 or 30 tests in the background. These are on just one of these images, either images, titles, bullet points. It's only on one of these factors, because you're giving yourself a double blind negative, in the sense that, oh, you know what, I'm actually going to change the title here, but I'm going to change the bullet point here. Then how are you going to prove that it was actually one or the other that did that? So test, but test smart as well. Quite interested to see what sort of tests the audience have done, what successes they've seen, and also in terms of other ranking factors when it comes to conversion, like what we've just mentioned about the metadata for images as well. So if anyone from the audience has got any points as well, very happy to discuss those later on in the Q&A as well.
Yes, definitely. Alrighty, so we already kind of started touching on some of these considerations, but again, before you start a test, there are some things you really need to think about before you even get going. The last one there, we already talked about trying to test only one variable at a time. That is a huge one that a lot of people do tend to slip up when they first start getting going with tests. But another one that we find at Kaspien that can just kind of skew a test almost instantly is finding the right time of the year to run your test. So we're gearing up for Q4, right? That's huge for anything commerce. And this has actually become like a no test zone for Kaspien, as we know that it's an influx of traffic and it can really potentially skew results to draw any true conclusions from. So yes, you can still do some tests, but we tend to kind of take the results with a little bit of a grain of salt, and we try to retest. That's another thing. I don't think we actually have that listed anymore. It's like whenever you do a test, retest to make sure that your conclusion wasn't a one-off fluke or something. That's another way to confirm that your testing results is accurate.
Yeah, exactly, 100% on that. It's you can run a test and it shows you exactly what you want to see, but then you do it 2 months later, and then all of a sudden it's on testing quarter by quarter, season by season, and then also taking into consideration, are there any big events going on? Like we've just had the Olympics in Europe, we've just had the Euros in terms of the football as well. All of these things that could affect the economy in any way, shape, or form will affect your e-commerce platform as well. So always take these things into consideration. How could my results be skewed?
Yeah, that's huge. We did a test for a partner and they didn't happen to tell us that they were running a promotion on their own website. And so at the same time, we were so excited to share the results with them, and right away it was just nipped. So sometimes it's hard to catch all those external factors, but that's definitely something you have to be cognizant of before you get these guys going.
And when you're choosing an agency like yourselves as well, one of the big things is you've got to treat each other as part of the same team. So someone should have at some point, not to call your vendor out on that. It's a case of you've got to make sure that you're on the same page, because you don't want these results. It's, oh yeah, we're absolutely smashing, we're flying it through. We don't need to run a test on this or test on this because this is all coming back fantastic. If we'd have known there was outside traffic being referred there anyway, that's something we could have filtered out and said, look, this is traffic that we got on top of that as well. But yeah, just to call out anyone that's using an agency, make sure they're not an agency. It's not us and them. Coming from an agency background, I can tell you it always works better if you're their voice in your office and you're their voice in their office as well. It's got to be that symbiotic relationship. It's not us and them, it's we, because at the end of the day, they're going to get better paid if they get you more sales. You're going to look better if you get more sales. It's a simple plan. I say it's simple, but I've been on both sides of it, so it's not as simple as I'd like to make it out, but it should be.
Yep, there's ways to make it work. All right, when it comes to testing duration, so everyone has their own best practices. Dan, what's your go-to? Like, if deadlines weren't a thing, how long is your perfect test?
For me, the longer the better, really, unless someone imposes a deadline. If someone says to me, Dan, I need this done in a week, I'm going to say, there's no point. We might as well just go. That'll give you a better answer. The minimum, I would say, 4 weeks, maybe. That's just to give it any sort of accurate testing, because you've got to take that month as a value, and then, again, what we mentioned before, the external factors that come to it as well. So at the very, very minimum, I would have a test running for 4 weeks. If I could, I'd have it running a quarter, but there's sometimes too long, and then there's sometimes not long enough as well.
Yeah, I know. I feel like if our back's against the wall, 2 weeks is the minimum we'll ever run a test for, but 4 weeks minimum is the absolute must for us. And something else to think about, so we're going to be talking about split testing tools today, which is great, but let's say you don't have a split testing tool. If you're trying to run a 4-week test, you're going to have to think about like having your listings locked up for 4 weeks, so you have a control period, and then 4 weeks after that is your testing period. So that means you could potentially have your listings locked up for 8 weeks to do one single test. So that's just another like value add too. If you don't already have a split testing tool, find one, because it's going to save you a lot of heartache, a lot of headache, and it'll make your tests run quicker, even though we still want that 4-week minimum.
As a sidebar, Sellzone is actually free for split testing, so I'm just putting it out there. It's not a pitch. I don't get any commission. Just keep putting it out there so the people at Sellzone listen. I don't get paid. I don't get any commission. This is me doing my thing because I love what I do, and I think it's worth shouting about when anyone else has got the opportunity. We're all about bringing everybody up, not pushing people down.
Yes, definitely. And then the last item on here is formulating a hypothesis. So before you start a test, it's not required by any means, but hopefully you have some kind of idea of what you're wanting to see come out of this test. So it doesn't have to be hard. It can be as simple as changing X into Y will impact this metric. And so a simple example is, let's put this keyword into the title, and with that, we anticipate traffic's going to improve, search's going to improve. Now you have your hypothesis, so you can use your data to either confirm your hypothesis or say, maybe not, and then you can rework the test hypothesis and so on and so forth. So that's just something that we like to, I personally always try to, our team, we're always having hypotheses beforehand, so we can put some thought into it and not just throwing random stuff on a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I echo that 100% in the fact that you can't go into this without a plan. If you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know what you want out of it, then that's your starting point. If a lot of people look at these things and they think, oh my gosh, where do I start? How do I get started with this? You need to do exactly what Jen just said there. Come up with a plan and then execute it. I make these things sound simple, but when I have to deal with when I have to deal like sort of 2,000-3,000 products at a time, you've got to make these quick decisions, otherwise you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. So let's see how to select testing tools. So what we're going to be going through next is 2 different tools that we both have our own expertises in. And so first one is one that I'll be covering, and it's actually an Amazon provided tool. It's called Amazon Experience. And on this list, you can definitely see there are some pros, but also some very obvious cons I learned from my own experience. So pros include, it's a free tool for most Amazon sellers. It pulls the data for you and puts all the data visualization for you. And it also essentially draws your conclusion for you. So it takes all the data crunching and data analysis out of it for you, which is really great for a lot of people that might not have the time or the resources to conduct a lot of tests. Cons though, these are some pretty big cons for me personally. Just being the Kaspien relationship, we are a reseller, and so the brand owner brand registry status is a huge speed bump for us. If we don't have that status, we actually might not even have access to this tool for a lot of our brands. The next kicker is ASIN eligibility. So Amazon is the one who determines what ASINs you can even conduct your tests on. So if Amazon doesn't think your ASIN has enough traffic, you won't qualify. You can't conduct a test on the ASINs you might wish. And so that's probably the biggest dagger when it comes to Amazon experiments, if you're not familiar with it. And then lastly, with this testing tool, the only items that you can actually test, or the only elements, is A+ content, product title, and then the hero or the main image. So if you want to do a test outside of that, you're going to be out shopping for another tool or be doing some manual testing.
I know it looks very, very biased on the Sellzone split testing, but I basically looked through all the cons that Jen's pointed out here, and I was like, well, I can test multiple items. When I've actually used the Amazon experiment, I get my teeth in properly. It's getting late in the afternoon in the UK, and I am an old man, as you can see. The fact that I could test some ASINs with Sellzone, but I couldn't test on the Amazon's own product was a massive mind blower to me. I couldn't get this around, and the Sellzone people are much more intelligent with me. The dev behind it is so much more than I could ever deal with. So the fact that you can do that to me says, well, actually, it does look a little bit biased here in the fact that we've not put any cons on there. But in all honesty, as an outsider looking into it, I couldn't see any. So yeah, it doesn't look like a good sell from my side. It looks like I'm kind of like just backing my own deck here.
And on that note, we'll move on. I'm joking. Perfect. Yeah, so I'll go and talk about the Amazon experience side of things. So first off, if you are a seller on Amazon, to navigate to Amazon experiments, you just go to Seller Central, you click on brands, and there'll be a manage experiments option. So clicking there will bring you to the page that you can see on the screen. And before you get going, like I said, you want to take a step back and think about all the considerations we just talked about. What type of test do I want to run? What is my hypothesis? Is this the right time for my test? And once you've answered all these questions, you can go ahead and get going and get motivated on your kicking off your test. And so something I'll call out here is after a couple of weeks, Amazon will start providing all the comparison metrics for you. Like I said, you need like a minimum length of your test, and Amazon is the same way. The minimum test they even offer is 4 weeks. And I think around the 2 week, maybe even the 3 week mark is the first time you even have a glance at the metrics to determine which version of your A/B test is performing better. So just another call out here, want to make sure that length of test is very important. Metrics that Amazon will show you, the ones that are compared, are conversion rate, units sold, sales. They'll show the approximate sample size, like how many people saw each version of your A/B test. And then once your test concludes, Amazon will use like their internal data, and they'll actually determine if you were to implement version A, they'll tell you the potential impact of what would happen if you actually kept that version moving forward. So that's pretty cool, I think, because Amazon uses their own internal data that they keep pretty locked up. And so it's kind of interesting to see what their take is on with the versions you might publish. And then the next slide is about how to selecting your listing. So I've already kind of honed in on this a little bit. This is a huge pain point for me because we have limited access to eligible ASINs. And so high-level requirements, I already touched on that. Brand registry first, and then you must have the rights owner status. And then your ASINs must have a high traffic and sales with a recent period. And I put that in quotes because Amazon doesn't define what is enough traffic to be eligible. And it can also really vary by category even. So it's really hard to put a defined number on that. So that's part of the pain point, is you don't know if your ASINs are eligible until you come into the screen. And if they're not there, you have to try and find a way. How do I ramp up traffic for this listing? What can I do? Do I need to do a revamp on the content before my test? Do I need to run advertising to bring more traffic to it? There's a handful of things that you might need to kind of pull out all the stops to even make your ASIN eligible, which is good. Your ACE will be eligible, but even that initial ramp up to try and get them eligible for the test could potentially skew your test results, in my opinion. And so this is just something I want everyone to be aware of before you go look at Amazon experiment testing.
Just on that one as well, I know I'm jumping ahead before the questions come into it as well. Have you found that if you were doing a parent and child listing, if the parent product was getting the significant traffic, but the child one wasn't, was it still pulling through the child product, or was it skewed off?
You know, I'm not gonna lie, one of the pain points with this is if we run a test through Amazon and it's on a variation listing, they don't give you a breakdown to show which child did what or anything like that. We would have to go in manually and pull our own business reports and break it down like that to see which child got the most sessions. But even then, like sometimes it's all the same because it's under one single parent ASIN. So that is a really good question, and that's probably something that I hope will come out with Amazon Experiments 2.0, 3.0, whenever they get around to making it better for us. Good question.
Sorry, I always say sorry. I interrupted the flow there. This is the joy of being on here. That I'm a panelist, but I'm also the guy that's gonna be asking most of the questions as well, because it's just there's always something. I've been on here since, like, say 2012, and I'm always finding new things out every day that I go into the platform. And to speak to an expert like Jen is just like mind blowing. And I'm not going to waste anyone else's time here by talking. I'm going to let Jen finish talking.
No worries, I'll take it. Alrighty, and then the next slide is just the last screen that you'll see before you even get your test going. So this is where you can label, you can name your experiment. There's nothing too exciting about that, but here's where they offer you to put in your hypothesis that we both advise, yes, please do that. And then you set your testing period. So something I didn't include on this screenshot is what the two different versions look like. So depending on your A/B test, you're gonna obviously denote version A and version B, A+ content, main title, and then main product image. Those are the only items that you can really edit here. So lower in the screen, which I didn't include, that's where you can kind of denote what it would look like. And once you hit go, your test is scheduled and it runs until obviously your scheduled time period. But let's say you got your results, I think 4 weeks around there is the earliest you can cut off a test and say, hey, this is enough results for me, I'm good. And you can actually cancel your experiment and then implement whatever content you want to move forward with. So I'll share a snapshot of the results in the case studies after Dan shares about the Sellzone split testing. So we'll circle back with Amazon experiments in just a little bit.
I'm actually wanting to rush through mine now so I can actually see the results of those case studies. I can see the case studies in front of me, but the detail behind them, I'm very, very excited to see. Sorry, I am fangirling way too much here. Let me just talk to you about, I've had many questions before, that when you deal with so many products, how do you deal with selecting those with those that you want to split test? And we've already mentioned the 80-20 split, but if all of your products are performing quite well, it's a case of, right, okay, well, where do I pull out that extra data? So one of the tools that Sellzone has provided is a listing quality check. You put in the ASIN or the URL to the Amazon store, and then we'll give you a 50-point breakdown of where the product is doing well, from the image length to all the way up to the A+ content as well. So if we could just go on to the next slide, please. So this is an example of a test that we ran before. So the Apple iPhone 11 Pro, the US version, we can see here has scored an 85%. What I've found is anything less than that is going to be suppressed by Amazon. It's very, very important that you get these key quality scores right. So if you're thinking, why is my product not ranking as high as it should be, putting it straight into this tool will give you a top listing, where we can see the Mario game has got a higher listing quality score. It's failed less of these checks as well. And even onto those checks, that's more of the A+ content and the video content. Something that I wouldn't say more advanced sellers are doing, but more sellers are doing at the moment in time. When we're all searching, we're probably seeing that the video SERPs are appearing more and more. And this is Sellzone telling you that, look, in your competitive area, you need to have this because your competition are doing the same thing. Next slide, please. So when we look into this, we can just go full scale, right? This is the breakdown, and it gives you the list of why you've got the failed check. So in this case, the new image needs to be on a pure white background. And again, in some cases, for certain products, the Amazon is, as we all know, Amazon's going to suppress these certain listings. But on the second part as well, if you can see, the image pixels are less than it should be. So on the one side, we're only 137 versus 1,000 in terms of pixels. Ideally, you're looking at 1,000 versus 1,000 pixels for Amazon. Amazon really wants you to break down that barrier that all e-commerce has when it's facing retail. The benefit retail store, bricks and mortar stores have over e-commerce is that you can actually have the product in your hand. You can look at it, you can examine it, and you can spin all the way around. Amazon's trying to overcome that barrier by having it so you can zoom in to even see what the sort of material looks like up close on like a running shoe. You even see what the weave looks like. So if your pictures aren't great, Amazon's going to push you down because it looks like you're a hack seller, as I like to call them as well. Next slide, please. So this is how we get started. So it's basically just putting into, you come onto the Sellzone, you've got the selection where it says A/B split testing. You click onto this and you come up with the screen that we've got here on connection 1, which connects to your Amazon account. So what you need to enter here is your seller ID, then followed by your MWS token. If you're not sure what an MWS token is, you can just put it into Google or put it into your Vendor Central or Seller Central, and it'll come up with it. You can copy it right into there. Once that is done, you hit connect, and it simply connects into your Amazon account, and you can start testing. What we can see here in figure 2 is exactly what Jen's mentioned before in terms of how we set this up. Now, the default setting here is 7 days, as I mentioned before. At the very least, and as Jen has said as well, the very minimum you want to do is change that to 4 weeks. First things first, go in there, change that to 4 weeks, and then you can select which parameter you want to change. So we can go into the title, the price, the description, or even the main images as well, and then select those. And as we mentioned, just make sure you tick in one of those boxes, okay? Because if you test in all 4 at once, then there's no point in you even trying. Can we just go on to the next slide, please? So once we've created the split test, we can then publish it on Amazon, and then we've got the original version versus the test version as well. So we can see the highlighted difference there. And then once we've gone into those, we then publish it on Amazon. And the really interesting thing about Sellzone is we actually get the data live. So we can then say, right, okay, as soon as it's out there, even if God forbid you're only going to do 1 week's worth of data checking, you've got that data to hand. Again, I wouldn't say it's particularly useful for you, but once we've got that, we then hit publish on Amazon, and then we can just go on to the next slide, and then we've got all the different tests that we're running at the same time. So these are the split test options, and we'll also say, right, okay, how well are we doing in there? So in the first instance, we can say, right, these are all the tests that we've got lined up, the ones that are not tested, the ones that are in progress, and also the ones that we've actually done quite well on, because split testing is what it is. It's a test. Unfortunately, sometimes these tests fail, but you don't know unless you try. I've got a good example in the case study before of where we failed dramatically, but then we turned around and then we won very heavily on the back end of that. So that's the full breakdown. We've got the list of split testing. So if we could just go on to the next slide. We can then say, right, okay, we've got a winner. The original has this much in terms of sales. So we've got the full breakdown there onto the far right. The original version sold 124 units, whereas the new test has sold 199 units, an increase of 60%. And these are all metrics that if you're reporting to a commercial director or to a head of digital, someone that doesn't really understand different metrics, it speaks in a language that we can say, we have made 60% more money for just doing this test. We can then say, right, okay, do we put it into another test, or do we go elsewhere on that as well? And I think that, yeah, that's it. That's everything. I know I've made it sound simple and a lot less stressful than it is. As Jen mentioned, you've got to have the hypothesis behind it, and you've got to have the drive to want to do it. But it's really that simple. From once Sellzone is plugged into your account, the interface is fairly straightforward to the point that even I can understand it, and it's made life a lot easier. So I could just go click, 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 right, leave that, come back to it in 4 weeks. Let's have a look at the data. Oh, that's not worked. Okay, let's try this. That one's worked. Right, let's do that, and then take the learnings, and then go elsewhere with it as well.
That's awesome. I just have a I'm going to throw a question right back at
Oh
you,
yeah, cool.
Dan.
Hit me.
Perfect. So getting content to go live on Amazon is kind of hard. Has there ever been hiccups where, like, I guess is your version 2 of a title, is it like pre-approved with Amazon? That way it'll automatically feed right in when your test starts?
Yeah, so it pulls through pretty instantaneously. It's then you're then given the option to make it to then select the title, then make it permanent. So that's when it really kicks in. So that's the sort of nail biting point where it says actually are you accept or reject. But at that point as well, you've already made the changes and you've already seen the sales increase in it. The only time we've ever had any issues is if there was a legacy issue with the product. So if we've had a product that's been in, again, I've just sold the iPhone selling iPhone charger business, so I can say this now. Like I said, I was selling iPhone chargers circa 2012, and the logistics and the word I'm looking for, regulatory services around electronics has got a lot stricter as time's gone on, as it should do, because Amazon's gone from just selling books to being the biggest e-commerce provider in the world. But if I was changing, say, a product that I listed circa 2012, I didn't have to put in X, Y, and Z category. I didn't have to put in length. I didn't have to put in manufacturer's warranty or anything like that. I then made the changes to the listing, and then I'd not updated any of these key factors that Amazon sees now. I would then get a rejection and have to put in these key factors that I'd have to put in for them as well. But you should, 9 times out of 10 you will have those to hand, unless like I say you're me and it's like, well, I've not sold this product since 2012. I only put it on because I found like a bag in storage that I needed to get rid of. It was either that or eBay, and I don't know how to work eBay that well, so.
Fair enough. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I just know that's a lot of the feedback we get from consumers now, is just changing listing content is always getting harder on Amazon. So I was curious if this was an easy way to get some content through, especially for testing purposes.
Yeah, from my side of things as well, it's literally click, 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 and
That's
then.
awesome.
But I'm very much one of those people that in the early days of Amazon would have got banned quite quickly, because it's a case of I just wanted to do things and I want to do things quickly. But in these cases now as well, we've set up the parameters so you can't do anything outside of the guidelines. You will fit into the guidelines, so you won't get your product banned by doing these things. That's the key elements there as well. Probably should have mentioned that as one of the selling points right at the start, but you won't get your account suspended by doing this.
That's great. That's a great selling point.
It should be something that I should have led with, really. My bad.
No, that's great.
And then we've just got some lessons learned from split testing. So the first product that I'm going to be able to go through is metal straws. Now, these are the UK SERPs results. So if you put in to Amazon UK metal straws, this is what you get. Now, if you were doing the competitor analysis here, you would say, right, okay, this is what we need. We need to have the plain white background. We need to have the straws, the cases, the cleaning elements all up in one. It's pretty, but the downside is it's pretty boring. There's nothing really catching your eye onto this, and you sort of like, well, if I was trying to stand out, what's going to make you stand out? Right, we've got the Amazon choice and we've got the Amazon bestseller. That's the only thing that sticks out. You look past all the sponsored ads, you look past the top 3 organic, and then you look, oh, actually, yeah, Amazon choice bestseller, I'll probably click on these. So that's messing with your SERPs right there as well. So if we could just go on to the next slide. By actually putting in play, and now these aren't some of the images we used, but they were in the same vein, where the background was slightly faded, not completely faded out, but the focus was still around the product. By putting these in action shots, where you could be out and about using the product, using them as cocktails, using something that's had a bit of vibrancy, add a little bit of color to it, by pulling these through and testing them to make sure, one, they were allowed, and two, that Amazon would not suppress our listings afterwards. We then saw 183% increase in sales by making us stand out within those SERPs, because we had action shots, we had color. We went into basic Google CRO, what draws people's attention, and the basic tenet of CRO is what is going to catch people's eyes and draw you through. So if you're doing everything that everyone else is doing, then in which case you're just going to look like everybody else. Why should they come to you as well? So this, we saw 183% increase in this. The interesting point about this is we got it wrong the first time. We didn't get the action shots right, and the listing actually got suppressed because we didn't meet Amazon's guidelines. But then when we faded out the background and then put these in action shots and really focused on the color aspect of it, everything worked out really well for us at the end of that. And then the second one is less of a luxurious product. It was a home STD kit. So the product was basically you took your own blood sample and then sent it off. Now this was a product that we sold in the UK and the US. Now if anyone's ever had to sell anything in the UK, you won't have had this problem. But if you start to sell in the US, you've now got the issue of state by state laws. Now Jen, you'll know about this better than anybody else here. The state by state rulings on what you can and can't sell on Amazon change. So the variants that you'd be testing could be up to 50 in that sense as well, depending on what the state's legislations are. And there's some of these states, particularly the red states, we couldn't sell the product in, or we could definitely not do any paid advertisements for. So it was a case of, right, okay, how do we really push up sales where there's a really strong restricted item? And what we did was we tested the titles and the product descriptions as well. So if we just called out straight to the point, what are they, what the products were selling and what is their function and how they did the function, because people were put off by the blood element, or if it was a urine test or anything else along those lines. As long as you were upfront about it, we then saw a massive increase in those, and we managed to sell an extra 1,034 units just by changing those titles in that 8-week period. And that's where the testing really came in handy, because we could say, right, okay, what are these guidelines? What are the guidelines we've got to focus on? What can we not say and what can we say? And what we found using the tool was actually Sellzone was quite useful in the fact that it wouldn't let me put in something that wasn't gonna fly basically in the US, and built around there as well.
Yeah, it's back to the you don't know what you don't know uncertainty thing. Testing that. Plain and simple.
Exactly. The client had come to us and said, I want to sell more on Amazon. We saw that the keywords, the keyword volumes for it were absolutely astoundingly high, especially in the US. So it was a case of, right, okay, how do we capture that volume without breaking the guidelines as well? So this is why I've included, like I say, it's not the most glamorous of case studies, but it's one of the ones where you can say, actually, you know what, by playing Amazon's rules and playing them fairly, we managed to get a bump up in the sales from there as well.
Yeah, that's great. Alrighty, and then the last case study that I guess both of us will be talking about, but mostly me, is one that we did with Amazon Experiments. And so this particular test, we were really just trying to determine whether adding a comparison chart to an A+ detail page, if it's truly impactful, does it help the listing performance? Does it help the listings you're featuring in that comparison chart's performance? And so this essentially was our hypothesis, like adding a comparison chart is going to improve listing and channel performance. And so on the left, you see our version A. That was the original A+ content that was live on our listing for who knows how long. And then version B was kind of the 2.0 version that we wanted to test with the comparison chart. And it's hard to tell in the screen grabs, but we did try to keep all of the text content the same between the two versions, just slightly different structure. Obviously, it looks like an image changed, but for the most part, we tried to make the key change between these two versions was that comparison chart. So we're really just honing in on that one single element. The next slide is going to be a snap of the early results from this test. So I think this is what Dan was a little bit excited to see, but it does show the two versions side by side, as well as all of the metrics that Amazon will automatically pull for this type of test. And so this screenshot came at the 4-week mark. I think this test was scheduled to run a full 10 weeks, but I wanted to show what just the 4-week mark actually looks like. And so as the test continues, the bar graph on the right would fill out more, and the probability will change and fluctuate as time goes on. And yeah, let's see the metrics that we have: unique units per unique visitor. We have the conversion rate between the two versions, units sold, sales, and the sample size. That's the interesting thing that Amazon experiments do is they have the test live for 4, 10 weeks, whatever you're doing, and they'll toggle between what is visible to the traffic that comes through. So they're going to do their best to try and keep the sample size similar and comparable between the two different versions, but they'll take that into consideration. Like this one, you can see version B did get significantly more samples or more people to the listing, and they took that into consideration when determining that probability rate at the top. So at the 4-week mark, it was determined that there was a 69% probability that version B with the comparison chart was better. So that was exciting to see, and obviously that is, it's not a great probability, but hey, it's over 50%, so that means that there is a probability that one is better. But these metrics are only for that single product, right? And so the second half of our hypothesis was wondering if the other products featured in the comparison chart would also be impacted. And so doing our manual polling that we had to do outside of Amazon Experience, we were able to confirm that there was a lift in overall traffic to those other items, as well as a slight lift in sales during our testing period. So it's a great test that was good for this single product, but we also pulled even extra results to confirm that the comparison charts are great for the other products that you're featuring even. And then the last little nugget that Amazon shares. So this is the part that's interesting because Amazon has their own data, right? They have so much they don't share with us, unfortunately, but they actually put together different scenarios. Like if you were to move forward with a version that they said was probably better, this is the potential impact that could come if you're to keep that version live on your listing. And so it's always kind of fun to see what Amazon's internal data. Obviously, the worst case scenario is not fun to see, but the best case scenario is potentially almost 2,000 extra in sales and incremental sales. So this is something that we always think is a little bit exciting. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt, but with all the data from Amazon experiments as well as our own, we were able to draw the conclusion that, yeah, not only did the product bring in more sales, but the cross-promoted products on the comparison chart also benefited from implementing this comparison chart.
That's absolutely fantastic. And like you said, even just at the 4-week mark to see that sort of differential is absolutely fantastic. And one of the first things I noticed that the sample size was slightly skewed. But one of the things that we need to take into consideration is that Amazon, because of the sales factors of this, will have automatically pushed towards that side anyway, because again, it wants to sell the product. So it will of course make that sample size bigger automatically as well. So that's, yeah, that was a lot of the insights. And like I said, I've got a buttload of questions of those, but I want to make sure we get through everyone else's questions before we get there.
Yes, of course, that's a good call out. That's actually, I did not think about that, looking at that quick little data snapshot. But yeah, perfect. That's a natural transition. Let's go ahead and get going with the live Q&A.
Hi everyone, I am back. So I am here to ask your wonderful questions to Dan and Jen. So let's get going. The first one is, should a test be run on only one product at a time, or is there a benefit to running a test across multiple products?
I mean, I know my answer for this, Jen. I'd love to hear your insights on this as well, because like I say, I just said I was running like 20 tests as we speak, so it's
I'll go first on this one for sure, so I don't bias anything. Yeah, it really depends on what you're testing. That's gonna be like a political answer, but there are times where it's really beneficial to do multiple products at once. And so Kaspien's in a unique position where we sell a ton of products across different categories. And so if we want to get like a good like overall conclusion, we will try to test multiple items across different categories, different price points, different, you name it, just so we can aggregate all the data together and come to a really good conclusion. And so an easy example for a test that we've done is when Amazon started banning the all caps and bullet points for like the 2-tier structure that you see a lot. We did a test where we took 10 to 20 SKUs and we didn't change anything about the listing content except the bullet points. We just lowercase all the all caps words. And so that was a test where it really benefited from having a little bit of electronics and baby and toys and games, so we could, again, bring all that data together and come to our conclusion. So it depends on your test. My long story short answer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just testing for testing's sake as well. It's, like I said, everything's got to have the hypothesis behind it. It's exactly as Jen said earlier. It's okay because, like I said, I'm probably the advocate for test as much as you can, but you've got to have a purpose to those tests. If I'm just saying, oh, actually, I might just tweak this, and it's all, why have I tweaked this? What benefit have I seen? The addition to these is, right, okay, actually, I've seen this keyword in the last quarter has shot up significantly against this keyword. Does that then apply to everything else that I've got? So, right, okay, let me try this on these products and then build it up from there. And again, it goes back to, why are you testing that specific product? Because if you're testing a product just for the sake of testing it, then there's no point. If you're trying to sell more of that product and you think you can sell more of that product, and all the data says you should sell more of that product, but you don't understand why, and that's where the A/B testing comes in as well.
Great answers, guys. And kind of along those lines, is it best to advertise and test the parent ASIN of a variation group or individual items within the group?
I saw your eyes doing the same as mine then. I was like,
yeah, my answer is going to be pretty limited, because with Amazon Experiments, they actually do force you to change everything on the parent as well as the children. So for Amazon Experience, you really don't have a choice. You have to do absolutely everything. But if I could only test one or the other, that's really hard, because certain categories, the title that displays in a variation, for example, is only the parent title. And then the question is like, okay, well, even though just the parent title is displaying, do the children still get indexed? Are they still being taken into consideration? So that's a good question. If in the perfect world, if I could test everything, I don't know what I would do.
I mean, you'll probably guess my answer is that you can test the child version of it with the Sellzone tool as well, and more often than not, I probably do, because again, we look at the variants. If we can say, right, okay, this again, I'm going back to iPhone chargers. If this iPhone charger is in white versus the black, blue, red, pink options, if the black, blue, and pink options are selling better than the standard white one, I then want to look into it as to say, well, why is this one selling better than that one? Is it trends? Is it what people are looking for? Is in that sort of case, right, okay, why is the parent not doing well, but then the child version is skyrocketing? And it's looking into those details as well. So as I say, I'm a massive test where you can advocate, but I follow Jen's answer in the fact that, if you can, should, would, could, it's a very gray line there, but yeah.
It depends.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid saying that as much as I can. I know my answer is very much bullheaded. I go in bull in the china shop, like, right, okay, why is this doing this? I go in and test it, but then I also know sometimes that I have to take myself back and say, actually, I probably shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
I've got other areas on the business. If it's business critical and you can't understand that, then yeah, test.
Yeah.
And test and learn.
Great, thanks, guys. This is a really easy one. Jen, for you, does Amazon Experiments work in Vendor Central? And then Dan, same question for you on Sellzone.
Yes, great question. I apologize for our Vendor Central guests and attendees. There is an experiments option in Vendor Central. It lives under merchandising. I think it's also Manager Experience or something like that. Yep, it's called Manager Experience. So it's going to look exactly the same, just how you get there is a little bit different in Vendor.
It's the same for Sellzone as well. It becomes a little bit more tricky if you're the brand owner and you've got other people selling the same ASIN, but you can still change it on your listings. It's just in terms of everybody else's that has that as well, that you have to sort of take into consideration as well.
Right. Glad to have both Vendor and Central seller users here. Jen, this one's for you. Can you share the results of your bullet test on the uppercase versus lowercase? Were you rewarded for changing to lowercase for your bullets?
That is a great question. I should have known the detailed results before I brought that scenario up. But the overall consensus that we came to is we actually did see an impact in SERP placement for keywords that were in the all caps that were changed to lower caps. Well, text, whatever. And so, yeah, what we did for that test was we picked a few keywords for each of our listings, and we looked at the organic SERP placement. We ignored the paid placement, looked at the organic SERP placement, and we checked it. I think it was 3 times a week for 3 weeks. And we did notice that the organic SERP placement improved a little bit. So our high level conclusion was Amazon was punishing organic placement for people that had all caps in their bullet points.
Yes, very interesting. I know they threw quite a wrench. in
It's
that.
good to have the solid data in there as well, to say that as well, because we know it's something similar in terms of symbol use as well. If for example, you had a SKU that was out there and it was add the SKU /GB, when we took out the / and just had put a space, we saw massive results on that as well. So even in terms of like the symbology behind it as well, because that's something more recently in terms of what Amazon's trying to pull back on. We don't want the dashes, we don't want the like ampersands in or anything along those sort of lines as well. It's those sort of subtle changes. I'm glad that there's someone that's got actual data around the capital letters as well, because I still see it where they go first bullet point, all capital letters, lowercase, lowercase, all capital letters, lowercase, lowercase.
It's definitely a trend on Amazon, still is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, great question. Are split tests run in one specific market, or can they be run across multiple international markets at the same time? And I think this is a great question as more and more people are crossing borders these days.
Yeah, especially because no, after you. Sorry, that's me. I'm being very rude.
No, not at all. The nature of working from home and doing webinars. Amazon Experiments, it is specific to the market you are selling in. So if you want to run one in Canada, you'd have to go into the CA market, make sure you have the brand registry, make sure your ASINs are eligible in that market, and then run the test from up there. So it does vary by market for Amazon Experiments.
It's the same with the Sellzone as well. You've got to use the specific MWS per region as well, because it's all well and good testing the variables, but variables in the UK to the US, even different parts of Europe can be massively different in those as well. So it's best to test them in their own ring-fenced environment, because like I said, if you're trying to take into all the other factors that might be affecting the US economy or the UK economy, then you then have to take into consideration, actually what's happening within Europe or in the Nordics, where Amazon's plummeted quite a lot. It's terms of trying to find, right, okay, work within those ring factors, because then you can work out the variables around those.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Okay, this one, here, let's say this is kind of on that other test example that you just gave, the all caps, but would the all capital scenario be the same in the title? Do you think, that would be worth testing and may lead to similar results?
Everything's worth testing. If you have an idea, like, heck yes, go for it. I'm not gonna lie, we didn't do the title test because our best practices, it used to be that all caps in the bullet points. So that's why it was crucial for us to go test and confirm whether the rumors were true. But I would assume that if Amazon's saying no caps anywhere in the listings, that perhaps there is gonna be a negative impact if you have all caps in your titles or your description, literally anywhere, it could potentially impact it.
It seems more and more, sorry, I interrupted again.
Go ahead.
It seems more and more that Amazon's favoring sort of more natural language, as when we all started out, it was bold, capitals, this. It was even putting exclamation marks in was a thing way back when, and the more natural language progressions, even in terms of like the title lengths as well, because in desktop, you get a certain amount of characters versus mobile, where you actually get less characters, but the best balance is to try and feed into both of them as well. But it's like you said, the more natural language is tending to push, is tending to rise a lot more on Amazon, I'm noticing at the moment.
Yep. Okay, this one. So it's the question is, does split testing give variables to private brands on entry, or do they consider it a level playing field on product variation? So I assume that's like when one of Amazon's private brands comes in or something like that. Have you guys ever run into that scenario, and does that affect testing possibly?
Sorry, I was just making sure that I didn't interrupt anybody else again. From my side, going on against Amazon owned brands is a nightmare, and it always happens when you find the best product. Straight away I'm exaggerating, within minutes it feels like that. If you've got a gold mine of a ridiculously low ACoS, a ridiculously high ROAS, all of a sudden Amazon picks it up, and then there's the Amazon Basics, which looks exactly the same, but it's in black. it can be, because unfortunately there is the big element, and as we said, testing price is a big factor, and a singular factor as well. And because price is still a factor within Amazon as well. That's not to say that luxury brands can't do well in Amazon. I mean, they've built the platform specifically around luxury brands, and I don't know how far along they've got with the US and the UK in those as well. But price does become a factor when you sort of look at the competition. If you've noticed your listing has dropped all of a sudden, it's always best to do the competitor research, say, right, okay, is there a new competitor in there? More often than not, it is going to be Amazon, or it's going to be somebody else that's come in and is halving the price of their product so they can get the initial boost within the rankings. You know, we were selling iPhone chargers consistently for around $9.99, and then someone came in and started selling them for $149 to just boost up their organic rankings because they were getting the sales. And then after that, they went into being actually more expensive than we were. Amazon is getting better at sort of cutting back on those people, but on the same breath as well, it's not going to turn down a bargain for people out there as well. So it's checking your competitors is a good way to start in terms of where do I start with what my hypothesis should be. I've seen competitor X is doing this. Let me test to see if doing this or a variation of this helps me with my rankings as well.
And along those lines, is price something you can test within either testing tool?
It is something you can test within Sellzone. We have I have run tests before where actually rounding the price up to say from $8.99 to $9, we've actually seen an increase in sales on that just because it's a nice round number, and you know people just take the nice round numbers in that. But on the other side of that as well, we've also seen massive negative connotations because the .99 seems to be a massive influx to people. If there's that one penny, 1 cent variant, that can be a bit more often than not is a negative. But there have been tests where within certain markets where I can say actually the £9 $9 sign has worked out quite well. So to answer it in short, yes, price is something you can test and something you should test as well.
Yeah, on the Amazon side, things unfortunately, Experiments doesn't allow you to do any testing on pricing. That's something you have to manually do and then check your own data.
Right. Well, thank goodness for testing tools, because tracking manually, I know you used to do that, Jen, before some of these testing tools, and it's quite a pain. So, and speaking of testing tools, if you are interested in checking out Sellzone, the split listing or the split testing tool is free. However, there are a lot of other good tools that are paid, and they are giving a discount to webinar attendees. So you can visit this landing page. It's going to be in your email very soon. Today, you will get an email with this recording, as well as a link to redeem this offer if you'd like. And then please reach out to us if you have any questions that we were not able to answer. But thank you. We'll conclude the webinar at this point, and thank you so much for your questions and for attending another one of our webinars. And with that, we will say goodbye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.